Hey everybody, I think it's high time we did another lore video like for the BioShock series, and I think I know just the franchise that needs a bit of unraveling, the Deus Ex series. The Deus Ex timeline has always been a complicated one thanks to the secrets on top of conspiracies covered in spycraft, but if we just go through the thing piece by piece, it'll make sense. Right? Well, if only that was the case. You see, while initially the prequel trilogy was laying the groundwork for connecting all the dots to help make sense out of the whole timeline, unfortunately, things went sour when Square Enix decided that they were not only going to cut the sequel to the prequel in half, but then they went and never made the second half of that game. Bummer, right? I don't think I have to explain to you that not only does that leave us on a massive cliffhanger for Mankind Divided, but also was an enormous plot hole that we're going to have to find a way to stitch together. Lucky for us, I have a solution. If we take the concept of death of the author, or whatever I feel like it should be for our own purposes, we can assert that if an author didn't explicitly say something, it's not part of the story, and that leaves unexplained parts of a story up to the readers to interpret. By the way, I don't care if I'm blatantly misinterpreting this concept for my own uses. You're just gonna have to go with me here on this one. So, because anything left out of a story is up to the interpretation of the readers, and since there is nothing between Deus Ex Mankind Divided and the original Deus Ex games, that means that literally anything the reader interprets goes, including fan fiction. So come with me into the deepest recesses of Archive of Our Own, which has a surprisingly large amount of Deus Ex fanfics, so that we may figure out what happened between Mankind Divided, which takes place in 2029, and Deus Ex in 2052. And you thought I was only doing one April Fool's video this year. Gotta make up for 2020. Just to make something abundantly clear, this isn't intended to make fun of anyone's writing or the contents within it or anyone's thing. I have to admit, most of these stories are not exactly my cup of tea, but that doesn't mean that such a thing is invalid or poorly written or anything like that. We're here respecting these writers because they are letting us fill the gaps in our continuity that Square Enix et al. Would not let Eidos Montreal fill. If anything, we should be applauding these people for picking up the slack. Additionally, I'm not going to be directly reading from any of these because the contents within are a bit too spicy for YouTube. It's just not something I can feasibly do. I will be summarizing and sort of reviewing though, so we can all figure out what happened in the timeline. Into the slash fics we go. The first fic we are now making into canon is called Incessantly by Gokkyun. I hope I said that right, by the way. The premise of the story is that Francis Pritchard is having a hard time at the airport getting held up at customs, and the jerk's lost his luggage. He also has nowhere to stay the night because of this premise. Adam Jensen invites him to stay over at his apartment while it all gets sorted out, and shenanigans ensue. Some might argue that this type of fic is referred to as plot? What plot? Or PWP for short, as it seems that the only backstory here is to serve as a means to get us into the action. However, there's just enough plot here for us to get an idea of what's happening immediately after the events of the London operation. The main events that happen here are Pritchard is welcomed into Jensen's abode. He learns the true extent of Adam Jensen's love of sugary cereals, which includes the fact that the only article of clothing Adam owns that is not leather or combat gear is a branded cereal t-shirt, which Pritchard must borrow as his own clothing is lost at the airport, and also that Adam has a tattoo of his favorite cereal mascot on one of the last patches of skin that he still has. And it isn't immediately available to the public eye. Things get a little steamy after Pritchard needs to use Adam's shower, and then the story concludes. So what can we derive from this sticky situation Francis Pritchard is now in after the game and after the Palisade property bank heist? Well, now we know that Francis Pritchard is actively in Prague and at Adam's disposal. Well, not like that, but I guess like that too. Take it what you will, please. There's not much else of prominent plot info we can get from this, but knowing that Pritchard is still in the game of 4D chess against the Illuminati is enough for me. Let's move on to our next fic. Next up is Prague, 10:42 p.m. by one truly certain, like that's their handle. It's a bit more plot-focused than Incessantly, and gives us insight into what's been going on at TF29 after the big London op. It also asserts that Jensen was able to not only stop both parts of Marchenko's plot, but also was able to snag the Orchid antidote for Jim Miller. And after having his life saved by Jensen, Miller decides to get to know his augmented agent a little better, and exactly what you expect to happen in these kind of situations in these literary works happens. Again, we are not judging here. So what happens in this fic is that after the events of the London op, Miller asks Jensen for a debrief about what's been happening with him over the last few missions, aka the events of Mankind Divided, and that somehow ends up becoming an invitation into Jensen's apartment and having some brown liquor together. After a night of advanced hanging out techniques, we flash forward to another op that TF29 is running, where Adam Jensen has traded himself for the hostages that a pro-humanist group has taken and proceeds to activate hyper-violence mode on them. The politicians that were initially taken hostage are safe, and Jensen leaves at least 2 terrorists alive so that they can be questioned later on. So what can we get out of this? Well, Adam was able to save Miller in-game. Task Force 29 is still operational, but Adam is presently on leave after the events of London, and that the Juggernaut Collective is actively making moves against the Illuminati right now through Adam and Farida Malik, who is his sort of flying chauffeur in this fic. There's also a bit of how there's a mole in TF29, but if you watch the credits in Mankind Divided, we already knew that. Overall, this fic gives us a pretty good idea of what's going on in a post-London op world, and there's also mention that various nations that had strict anti-augment laws passed after what happened in Panchaea loosening up as Adam is able to freely travel about Europe and the US. So the final fic that we can use to figure out what happened after Mankind Divided is Adam Jensen, Coffee God, by Drake. In this fic, we find out that the undoing of TF29 does not come from Illuminati agents subverting the organization, but instead from Adam Jensen's love of coffee. So the fic is told mostly from the third-person perspective of Jensen, where things started to calm down in the wake of the London op. Adam finds himself with an insane amount of reports and debriefs to do, which leads him back to his old habits when he was on SWAT. Primarily drinking a crapload of coffee and wasting an even bigger crapload of coffee because he'd make a batch, ignore it while working until it gets cold, and then toss it out before making a fresh batch of coffee and having the whole nightmare start over again. This gets out of hand, and passive-aggressive emails are sent about the excessive use of coffee mugs without cleaning them. Adam takes a picture of the email, complete with half a dozen mugs, at his workstation, and sends it to Farida Malik for a laugh. Things get so out of hand that TF29 gets audited for fraud because Manderley got real suspicious about why they were spending so much money labeled as coffee, and Jim Miller is forced to send a staff-wide email about coffee rationing. Adam sends this email to Malik too, and later on she delivers a literal crate of coffee grounds to TF29's front store, which is mistaken for a bomb. From Coffee God, we learn that Adam Jensen has at least some level of awareness of TF29's corruption and is subverting them through the excessive consumption of coffee, ruining their budget. But before the powers that be figure this out, Juggernaut Collective ally Farida Malik swoops in and resupplies the coffee for the whole building before Adam is outed as the Coffee God. So before we divine what the plot is between Mankind Divided and Deus Ex, let's take a look at another source of potential information on the internet that can help us learn more about the characters and what they're doing. You see, the Deus Ex prequels came out right as Ask vlogs on Tumblr were all the rage, so nearly every character has an Ask vlog. What's an Ask vlog? Well, here to explain it is fellow internet person, lead researcher of Tumblr anthropology at Miskatonic University, and feline lasagna aficionado, Izzy's.
As many people know, Tumblr.com is kind of a haven for fandoms, whether they be for books, TV shows, or video games, and there are many different ways that fans interact with each other on the website. Fan art, fanfics, and fan-made music are common sites on Tumblr showcasing the creativity and passion that many fans have, and one of the most popular ways for fans to participate in their fandoms is through the use of an Ask blog. For the uninitiated, an Ask blog is basically when a fan picks a character or characters that they like and sets up a Tumblr blog where they can answer questions as those characters. Other users can use Tumblr's built-in Ask feature to send in questions either from their own blogs or anonymously. Some Ask blogs reply using artwork or comics, while others simply write out their responses in the first person. It's basically a unique way of role-playing that you really only see on Tumblr. The Ask feature was implemented onto Tumblr on the 6th of January in 2010, but Ask blogs as a concept wouldn't really exist until around a year later. Unsurprisingly, one of the first Ask blogs was a Homestuck blog, which was created in April of 2011 and is generally credited as having popularized the phenomenon. Ask blogs were further popularized during the My Little Pony fandom boom when the website Equestria Daily published some My Little Pony themed Ask blogs on their at the time extremely popular website. And while these early 2010s fandoms definitely popularized the modern Ask blog, the concept can be traced back as early as 2008 on LiveJournal with a series of Doctor Who Ask blogs which were then dubbed the Askverse. Tumblr Ask blogs definitely aren't as popular nowadays, but they remain as a staple on the website and a huge part of fandom culture.
So pretty much every character that was in Deus Ex Human Revolution has or had an Ask blog, and Ask blogs being Ask blogs, they all interacted with one another. There's varying levels of dedication to staying in character here, and after revisiting all of these that I could still find for the first time in close to a decade, some of these are much better than others, and the blogs can only be as good as the questions they're given let them be. We should probably start with Adam Jensen himself. If I had to guess, this person might have just been the first one to get the URL for Ask Adam Jensen, and I have to admit they don't do a very good job of staying in character. For some stretches of the blog, there are more mod posts than answers, and it doesn't help Jensen's blog's case that a lot of the asks they get sent are memes that even at the time of this blog's activity were dated and pedestrian, so there wasn't much to work with. However, that doesn't really excuse the mod frequently breaking character to thirst over fan art. This blog ends, like so many others do, with a near boilerplate mod post saying, "I'm so sorry I haven't been active, but there's gonna be new posts coming soon, I swear. Last posted 8 years ago." And then we've got a slew of minor characters to go over that sort of fill out the world that Deus Ex takes place in. There was a now deleted blog from the point of view of various Seraph Industries employees, Eliza Kassan, the radio conspiracy guy Lazarus who liked to scream at the other blogs, and one for antagonist Fedorova, which only really answered questions with little doodles of the character, but to be fair, Fedorova didn't have much characterization to begin with. The one that I remember being really good was the one for Farida Malik, but unfortunately, that one got deleted, and I can only find bits of the replies that mention the character interactions, but no post from the blog itself. Lucky for me, at least some of the blog was captured by the Wayback Machine, however a lot of the images weren't saved, and there's also mention of an Alex Denton RP and Tiny Chat, so we're not digging any deeper lest we strike a very cursed vein of lore. Finally, we've got the Ask blog for Francis Pritchard, which I personally think is the best of the bunch. Not only does whoever is behind it try their damnedest to stay in character, and rather than give in to all the aggressive shipping sent their way, Askblog Pritchard becomes increasingly unnerved about how all these strangers on the internet are sending him smut of him and a coworker that he isn't actually too fond of, to hilarious results. The Pritchard blog lasted a little longer than the others, with the final post being 7 years ago instead of 8 or 9. However, it still didn't make it to the release of Deus Ex Mankind Divided, as the Askblog economy collapsed in a post-DashCon Tumblr. So what can we learn from all this? Well, it would appear that after the events of the London Op where Marchenko is killed, Jim Miller is saved, and Adam Jensen successfully saves both groups of people from the Marchenko attack, Pritchard comes to Prague to help with the Juggernaut Collective's operation, whilst Adam, now knowing that TF-29 is corrupt, begins to sabotage TF-29 through the excessive consumption of coffee. Once TF-29 is crippled and Jim Miller is retired and out of the way, Adam takes a sabbatical as the world is beginning to calm down in the wake of the London terrorist attack being successfully thwarted, to travel to Europe and parts of the US, tracking the Illuminati's movements and trying to figure out what they're doing with all those augmented people that disappeared just like he did during Panchaea. Clearly, something goes wrong though, as eventually the NSS informed, the Orchid virus is perfected into the Great Death as people try to usurp the Illuminati, and then it is unleashed upon the world, setting the stage for the rise of UNATCO and the events of Deus Ex. Mystery solved! So in conclusion, By the power vested in me by literally no one, I declare all of these to be canon now, and there is nothing anyone can do to stop me, save for one exception. From now on, all the previously mentioned events are now exactly what happened between Deus Ex Mankind Divided and Deus Ex, because we have nothing else as a point of reference. If you happen to be listening, Mr. Mitsuda, there is one thing you can do to stop all of this. Greenlight the final part of the Deus Ex prequel trilogy and give us the game we were supposed to get in the first place. Stop trying to throw money at Marvel's Avengers. Stop trying to blame whatever marketing conditions or something or other on the lack of sales for a Deus Ex game. Just let Eidos Montreal make the stinking game. So if it wasn't clear already, this is the second April Fool's video I made to make up for the lack of April Fool's video last year, and I hope you got a good chuckle out of this. I want to take the time to thank the writers Gakyan, Truly Certain, and Drake, whose works I reviewed and reinterpreted into the binding canon of the Deus Ex timeline, and I'd like to take the time to thank my patrons right now who voted for this to be the April Fool's video. Actually, there were 2 April Fool's videos that were in a dead heat, so I decided, screw it, I'll do both of them. If you'd like to vote on what videos come next, head on over to patreon.com/charlatanwonder, where you can get early access to videos, voting rights on future videos, exclusive uncut versions of commentary videos like this one, I guess this is commentary, and recipes to all the cooking segments, and so much more. In the meantime, stay safe, stay indoors, wash your hands, wear a mask and practice your social distancing when you need to go out, and enjoy this cat video. Alright, time for some first-person cat petting action. Cat bothering action. Get in position here. Oh geez, I spilled food all over my lap. I'm gonna pet the cat. We're meeting resistance. What about a scritch? Would a wake up scritch be nice? Oh, I bother you so much. How are pets? Oh, you're gonna attack the other hand. You have learned that it's all part of the same machinery. This is how it's going to be. I'll admit, I did wake you from your nap for this. Yeah, I think you're just more interested in napping, aren't you? Okay, we can do first-person pets another time. Where's my